Friends, lovers of history and the future, before you start reading this story, do me one small favor. Like this video and subscribe to the channel. This isn't just a polite gesture. It's your passport into the world of forgotten technologies and secrets that reshape our understanding of what's possible. Today, we're digging up one of the most exciting and tragic secrets of Soviet weapons design. And believe me, after this tale, you'll never look at an ordinary Kalashnikov assault rifle as the pinnacle of creation again. I promise you'll have plenty to think about and share in the comments. Let's go. The volley that shattered the silence. Imagine a testing range somewhere deep inside the Soviet Union. The late 80s. The air is cold, smelling of metal, gun oil, and snow. A group of serious men in greatcoats and technical smocks watch a shooter shoulder a strange, elongated assault rifle. It doesn't look like the familiar Kalash, but you can sense its bloodline, its steel soul. Command rings out. A short, dry ba-bam. But it's not a familiar burst. It's something else. The sound isn't rolling, but dense, percussive, as if someone had punched a sheet of iron with immense force. A target several hundred meters away doesn't just get two holes. It's practically torn apart. Two bullets arrived almost simultaneously, with an interval the human ear cannot detect. The tester lowers the rifle. His face shows not a smile, but something between astonishment and respect. One of the generals standing nearby grumbles grimly. Harder to assemble than to disassemble. This phrase is not a condemnation. It is the highest form of praise. It is an acknowledgement that what they have before them is not just a weapon. It is an engineering revelation. Why did this revelation fade into oblivion? Why did this double blow of fate never become the voice of the Soviet and then Russian infantry? This is the story of the AO-63. A story of genius ahead of its time, and a story of a system that was not ready to accept it. Abakan, not a city but a death sentence for the AK. To understand the phenomenon of the AO-63, we must transport ourselves to the historical and political context that gave it birth. The Cold War was raging. Not its early romantic phase but its mature, technological, and bloodily sober phase. Afghanistan. It was there, in the mountain gorges and scorching plateaus, that the legendary Kalashnikov assault rifle first showed its vulnerable spot. The Mujahideen fighters, often armed with Old English rifles, delivered accurate fire at long distances. Their tactic was one precise shot, and the Soviet soldier, armed with the AK-74, could only respond with long bursts, the effectiveness of which beyond 300 meters plummeted. Why? It all comes down to the fundamental principle of automatic weapons. When firing a burst, the first bullet leaves the barrel before the recoil is fully transferred to the shoulder and body of the shooter. It flies where the sights are aimed. But the second, third, and subsequent bullets are fired when the barrel is already jumping up and to the side. As a result, if the first bullet might hit the chest target, the second would go somewhere towards the head, and the third would fly over the target altogether. This resulted in monstrous inefficiency. The soldier spent cartridges, giving away his position with long bursts, but could not reliably hit the enemy. The army didn't just need a new assault rifle. It needed an intelligent assault rifle. A weapon that would think for the soldier in that critical moment when aiming time is measured in fractions of a second. Thus, a competition with the poetic and formidable name Abakan was born. Its task was formulated with the laconic grandeur typical of the Soviet military, to create an assault rifle that would surpass the AK-74 in burst-fire accuracy not by percentages, but by multiples. This was a challenge to the best minds of the Soviet weapons design school. And they answered. Dozens of design bureaus responded, presenting the most insane and brilliant projects. Among them was the AO-63, the brainchild of the engineering tandem of Pyotr Trofimovich Nikitin and Yuri Konstantinovich Slonensky. They approached the problem not as improvers, but as revolutionaries. Their motto could have been, if the problem is recoil, let's make it so the recoil simply doesn't have time to interfere. The anatomy of a marvel. What was the AO-63? Let's finally understand what this assault rifle was. Externally, something between the elegant SVD sniper rifle and the brutal AK. An elongated barrel, or rather, two barrels, a massive but slender receiver. But all the magic was hidden inside. The heart of the beast, two barrels. The idea of two barrels in an automatic weapon wasn't entirely new. Think of machine guns or shotguns. But Nikitin and Slonimsky applied it to an assault rifle, and did so with the elegance of a samurai. Two barrels, arranged parallel, were not just two tubes for firing bullets. They were a single, synchronized system. The brain of the system, the doublet or impulse firing mode. This is where the real magic begins. Imagine you press the trigger for a burst. What happens in the AO-63? Both firing pins strike almost simultaneously. The interval between shots was only 0.01 seconds. This is 10 times faster than the blink of a human eye. Two bullets of 5.45mm caliber fly out of the barrels before the rifle, in essence, has even realized that a shot has been fired. The recoil simply doesn't have time to move the weapon off the line of sight. And only after that, when both bullets are already racing towards the target, does the standard automatic reloading mechanism activate, and the rifle can fire a conventional burst. Imagine the effectiveness. The probability of hitting the target with the first shot, which was actually a double one, increased 2 or even 3-fold. This wasn't just a shot. It was a killer shot, a guaranteed shot. For an enemy in a trench or behind cover, it meant that he wouldn't hear the familiar ta-ta-ta after which he could duck. He would hear a crushing bam ta-ta-ta, where the first syllable is his death. Technical specifications that impress even today. Caliber, 5.45mm, standard for the USSR at the time. Barrels, 2 working in unison. Feeding, a unique 2-row magazine for 45 rounds. Essentially, it was a coupling of 2 magazines, one for 15 rounds, another for 30. This solved the feeding problem for 2 barrels. Fire modes, single shot, fixed burst of 2 shots, that very impulse, fully automatic fire. Rate of fire. This is where the numbers send a shiver down the spine. In standard automatic mode, about 600 rounds per minute. And in that double impulse mode, an equivalent 6,000 rounds per minute for the first 2 bullets. No one in the world at that time could offer such fire density at the start of a burst. Economics versus genius. Why did the USSR say no? And here we approach the main drama of this story. The assault rifle showed phenomenal results in tests. Its accuracy was almost twice that of the AK-74. It was reliable, durable, as befits a Soviet weapon. Why did the military, after meticulously calculating all the pros and cons, shelve this project? The first and main reason, economic feasibility. Let's be honest. The late USSR was not the Stalinist industrial power mobilized for total war. It was a huge, complex organism with a giant military budget, but also with serious economic problems. Weapon production is not only about its combat qualities. It's about cost, speed, and scale. The Kalashnikov assault rifle was a genius not so much of engineering thought, but of manufacturability. It could be produced in factories on conveyor belts, assembled by semi-skilled workers, and, if necessary, even in makeshift conditions. As parts were crude, the tolerances were large. It was a workhorse weapon. The AO-63 was a thoroughbred racehorse. Its mechanism required precision machining. The synchronization of 2 firing mechanisms, the fitting of 2 barrels, the complex system of feeding cartridges from a 2-row magazine, all of this was a challenge for the Soviet defense industry. Retooling all factories to produce such a jewelry item would have meant spending astronomical sums and halting the production of millions of proven AKs. In the face of an impending economic crisis, this was an unaffordable luxury. The second reason, the soldier in the field. There's a famous phrase, "A weapon must be dirty, but work." The simplicity of the AK was its salvation. A soldier could disassemble and reassemble it in the dark, in a trench, in a dusty sandstorm. This wouldn't work with the AO-63. That very tester who said, "Harder to assemble than to disassemble," hit the nail on the head. A weapon that a soldier cannot quickly clean and service in the field is a dead weight. It is a potential cause of death for a squad or a platoon. The army is not a gathering of weapons enthusiasts. It is millions of conscripts for whom a rifle is a tool. And this tool must be as simple and understandable as possible. The third reason, the Abakan winner, the AN-94 Abakan. The competition was won by Nikhanov's assault rifle. And it also used the principle of a high-rate doublet burst. But it did so differently through a clever mechanism with a sliding barrel and a pendulum balancer. The AN-94 was, in the Commission's opinion, simpler and cheaper to produce than the double-barreled monster of Nikitin and Sloninsky. Although its fate, in the end, was also not the happiest, it never became a mass army rifle, remaining a weapon for elite units. The Abakan story is a classic dilemma. What to choose, a breakthrough, but expensive and complex technology, or an evolutionary, but more reliable and cheaper improvement? In the late 80s, the USSR chose the latter. A missed opportunity? A view from today. What if? This question excites the minds of all weapons enthusiasts and alternate history fans. Could the AO-63 be useful today? Let's look at modern combat. These are not the linear battles of World War II. These are fights in cities, in mountains, clearing rooms. Distances have shrunk to tens, less often hundreds, of meters. In such conditions, what matters is not range, but rate of fire, density, and accuracy of the first shot or burst. The one who covers the enemy with lead first is the one who lives. Imagine an assault group entering a building. An encounter with the enemy in a corridor lasts seconds. A conventional rifle, a burst, several bullets, a chance of a miss. The AO-63, a crushing double blow, practically guaranteeing a hit. Modern materials, polymers, composites would drastically reduce its weight. Modern CNC machines would solve the problem of precision assembly. Equipped with a collimator sight, laser target designator, and flashlight, this rifle could have become the ideal weapon for special forces. Moreover, its concept of a hyper-rapid first impulse is alive today. The German G11 assault rifle, which fired caseless ammunition, used a similar principle of an insanely fast 3-round burst. The South Korean Daewoo K-11 rifle combines a firearm barrel and a grenade launcher. The world is looking for ways to increase the effectiveness of the first volley. And Soviet engineers had already found it almost 40 years ago. The AO-63 was not a missed opportunity in the literal sense. It was an opportunity that its time could not realize. It was too smart, too complex, too expensive. It was like a blueprint for a jet aircraft found in Leonardo da Vinci's papers, brilliant, but unfeasible with the technology of his era. Not forgotten exotica, but an eternal reminder. Today, a few surviving specimens of the AO-63 gather dust in museum vaults or are gems in private collections in the West. One of them, they say, ended up in the USA and caused a real shock among weapons experts there. They disassembled it, studied it, and couldn't believe that such a thing was created in the backward Soviet Union. This assault rifle is not just a curiosity. It is a monument to that very Soviet weapons design school that could not only copy and improve, but also make dizzying leaps into the future. It is a reminder that the path of progress is strewn not only with triumphs but also with brilliant failures, which sometimes turn out to be more important than victories. It was inconvenient for a conscript soldier, but it was a luxury for a professional shooter. It was too complex for a mass-production factory, but it was a masterpiece for a design engineer. It lacked the simplicity of the Kalashnikov, but it possessed the unrestrained courage of thought that is not afraid to go its own way. Friends, that brings our story to a close. But the discussion is just beginning. What do you think? Did the Soviet military make the right choice by abandoning the AO-63? Could this weapon have changed the course of any local conflicts? Or perhaps you served in the army and held an AK. What's more important to you, ruggedness or accuracy? Write your thoughts, stories, and guesses in the comments. Let's really break this topic down. And of course, if you found this as fascinating as I did, show it, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Dozens more stories about forgotten, secret, and incredible weapons from around the world await us. See you next time.